Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad as we're counting now down less than 35 minutes and launch until Relativity Space attempts to launch their first rocket, the Terran 1, from Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. If you're a first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the launch pad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together, and we're glad to have you joining us for our third attempt at the maiden flight of Terran 1 out of Cape Canaveral. We had a slight delay to the beginning of today's stream due to wind conditions. That's what you're seeing on your screen here. We've been monitoring those upper level winds, currently looking like they're in the 50 knot-ish range, even up to 60 knots if we bring that altitude down a little bit. So that's what Relativity Space is monitoring at this time. We're expecting them to go live here in just a couple of minutes as we are counting down to launch. At this point, everything is trending towards a go for launch in T-minus 34 minutes from now. But as always, as we get started, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We see there's tons of you all over the world, and we're glad to have you here. We got Robert from the UK. We've got Jeremy in Pennsylvania. Old C and Northwest is in Wisconsin. Rebecca's in Texas. Stratobaster in Pennsylvania. Thomas is in the UK as well. Amnita's in California. Great having you all joining us here today. As always, here on the Launchpad, if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live. If you want to know more about today's mission, as always, you can head on over to tlpnetwork.com/launch to check out our mission briefing for today. We'll drop that link in the chat there for you. As well, that's where you can learn more about today's launch window, the rocket, the timeline of today's launch, and a bit more about the first and second stage of today's vehicle. As we said, this is the maiden flight of Terran 1 from Relativity Space, and we're glad to have you here. We've got an updated time, T0 now set 22:38 Eastern Time, so they are continuing on for that count. So we are double checking our T0s, and we'll get that synced up, but that should be pretty close. We're just a couple minutes there, so we'll work on syncing that clock. But if you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. We'll work on answering those live. We want to point out a couple things as always. It is launch day, which means you can get 10% off of everything over on the TLP shop. That's our prints, our shirts, and our launch gear. Always going to point out one of my favorites, our sample return bag, as well as our All Systems Go tee. Global shipping is available, and we got sizes extra small to 5XL to make sure everyone can get some launch gear. Now, one thing you may not have heard about is Lunex 1, and our team is so excited to have finally been able to announce this here at the Launchpad. We have booked our own mission to the moon. We are sending our own payload from the launch pad to the moon, and we want you guys to be on board. So if you go to the link in the chat or to tlpnetwork.com, you can submit your name for free and all your family and friends' names as well to be included on board our mission to the moon, Lunex 1, targeting launch next year. We're going to be rolling out more details as we're allowed to release them on the rocket, the lunar lander, and everything. So you'll be getting kind of quarterly updates from there. You'll get a name plaque the moment you register your name for free, and then you will get your boarding pass like you see here on screen once we reveal the vehicle and the mission patch that'll be sent to you when we are actually boarding the spacecraft. But we wanted to take it one step further, and we want you to be part of our digital time capsule. We believe exploration's better together, and we want you to be part of that. So you can actually send a photo or video as part of our payload to the moon. Photos are $5. Videos, if the 30 seconds or less, are $15, and you can send those through the store there as well. All of those will be loaded up on our payload as we send it to the moon, but we're super, super excited that Lunex 1 is now finally something we can talk about. We've been working on this for a year. It's going to fly with Astrobotic on one of their future lunar landers, and we thank them for the opportunity of being on board with them. So definitely check that out, tlpnetwork.com/Lunex1, and join us on board on our mission to the moon. You're going to be probably hearing a lot about Lunex 1 over the next 6 months to the year as we invite people to join us on this adventure. It just helps us make TLP even greater, bringing you the best possible coverage of everything space. So we're glad to share that with you here tonight. But you're here for Terran 1. We are now T-minus 38 minutes, 26 seconds and counting. We've synced our clocks there. And once the Relativity goes live, we'll do so again. If you're just joining us, welcome here as we count down to the maiden flight of Terran 1 from Relativity Space, launching from Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We've been monitoring those upper level winds in the area. They're ranging between 55 and 60 knots. Roughly, the ground winds at the surface are actually looking pretty good, only 12 knots, but it's those upper level winds that they're monitoring. It is a smaller rocket, so those upper level winds are definitely something to focus on. There is no payload on board today's mission, as it doesn't have fairings. It actually has a nose cone, and I'm sure they'll show us that once we have a live view from the pad. But included in that nose cone is actually one of their failed first 3D prints of Relativity space that they're sending up on today's mission. Good luck, have fun, which we're now counting 37 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting till launch. A quick run through about today's timeline of events. We are expecting to see, and you can see this over on the shop or on the website, we'll expect liftoff obviously at T0. Max Q will occur about 1 minute 20 seconds into flight, with main engine cutoff 2 minutes 40 seconds into flight. We'll have stage separation 5 seconds later, and then we'll go into second stage start, and that second stage will burn for a total of 5 minutes, before it has second engine cutoff, and that would be a completion of today's mission. As we said, this is a test flight, so that is what we are expecting here today. A little bit different than we would see if we had a payload customer on board. But we're just waiting now for Relativity to begin their live feed. But if you're just joining us, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth right here at the launch pad, because we believe that space is better together. We're glad to have you here. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those into the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We'll work on answering those live. I see an important one from Noah there. T0 on the website. We're getting that updated. It's really fun right now. North America has changed its time zones, but England and UK and Europe have not. So there's some fun in the computer systems of normally it's a 7-hour difference, but right now it's 6. And so we're getting that fixed for you, Noah. We do have our team checking that out to make sure we got that up to date, and we're making sure the other ones are up to date as well. But thanks for sending that in. If you guys have questions, as we said, we can see you sending those in. Janet, why do we keep seeing bursts of flame next to the pad? That is a flare stack. So that is for them to burn off any of the extra propellant to make sure that the pad is safe in the lines. That's normal. Almost every pad generally has a flare stack. SLS had a massive flare stack, and that's something normal to see here as well. No, I've got another stream that has a different T0. Well, we're running from a T0 straight from Relativity, so that is what we are running off of. So we're running straight from the launch provider. What our countdown is T-minus 35 minutes, 13 seconds, and counting. Lots of people joining on. It's great to have you all here. We got Aiden in Ohio, Peter's in Toronto. Let's see who we're catching up. We got Midnight in Michigan. Great having you here. Lots of people from the UK tuning in. I know it's a very early morning for you guys, but we're glad to have you joining us here as we count down towards this maiden flight for today. Daniel, there's no accept button when you hit enter for your info. If you've entered info once and you've submitted a name, you'll have to close it, refresh, and then you can do another one, I believe, for it. So that should fix that. If not, give it a refresh, and that should get you set. It might be that it's just very busy right now with people sending their name to the moon. If you want to know more about that, tlpnetwork.com/lunex1. We're sending a payload to the moon, and we want you to be on board. Relativity has begun their live feed, and the moment they start talking there, we will, of course, patch them in for an update on today's flight, how the rocket's looking and how weather's looking. Of course, we're continuing to monitor that weather situation, but other than that, everything is good. There's no risk of lightning, no cloud rule violations. The rain should have cleared at this time. We are now into today's 3-hour launch window, that window running from 10 p.m. Eastern time to 1 a.m. Eastern time, and we do actually have that clock we can pull up on your screen here. That is your T0 for the launch window in the top right corner of your screen. That is how long we have left that they can actually launch today. So you're going to be wanting to monitor that. We'll bring that one on and off as we continue. Hopefully we don't enter any more holds tonight, but if we do have that timer there to make sure that we know when today's window will end. Watching here on YouTube, we've got that poll in the chat. How do you think today's launch launch will go. Do you think we're going to see a perfect launch? Do you think we might see a RUD during the first or second stage of flight? Or do you think we're going to see a scrub over 1,000 votes? And it's almost a tie between perfect launch and a scrub. Take a moment, let us know about that in the poll. We'd love to see what you guys are thinking, and let us know in the chat why you're thinking that, as we are now T-minus 33 minutes and counting until the maiden flight of the world's largest 3D printed rocket, commercial rocket, ready to launch from Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral. We're glad to have you joining us all here. Some people asking, what do I think is going to happen? Space is hard. I absolutely hope that it goes well, but seeing, the difficulties getting off the pad, I think a scrub's likely possible option, especially if the winds are right on that borderline. They're gonna go safe than sorry. They're not gonna risk it. It's not like a Falcon 9 that we've launched 200 of them. We know how it flies and they can watch their parameters. This is a brand new rocket. You want your winds to be perfect. So if anything goes wrong, it's your rocket and not outside conditions that you had a control on for it. If we see Terran 1 lift off the pad today, obviously I hope it goes well, but if anything, the hardest point for me is always going to be that MECO second stage separation and second stage ignition. That's where we see a lot of first rockets have issues, so I think that's where we would see it. If anything, we do not have a payload fairing, we do not have payload deployment, so there is one part of this launch that we will not be testing today, but we will most likely see tested on the next Terran 1 flight, so we'll have to wait and see, but let us know in the chat. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that like button. It really does help us out, and we'd appreciate that support. And share out the stream as we continue to count down towards launch. We're going to be answering those questions live. Just waiting for Relativity to begin their live commentated portion, and we'll, of course, patch in to listen into them for that final 30 minutes of the count. Saw some people asking about the emojis that are in the chat. If you would like to use our custom emojis for that, you can do so if you become a TLP member. So consider hitting that join button. As low as 99 cents a month, you help us bring you the best possible coverage of everything space from around the world. And you get to have those awesome go, no-go, hold emojis that we use a lot. So definitely take a moment, check that out. It helps us out. So we appreciate your support, but just by being here, hitting that like button, subscribing, that is also an amazing support, as we are now just under 31 minutes and counting until a launch here from Slick 16, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. The Terran 1 rocket, once we see it on the pad there, little details though with it. It stands 32 meters tall, or 105 feet, has a diameter of 2.3 meters, or 7.5 feet. So smaller rocket compared to what we've seen with some of the others, but definitely a great vehicle to see. Another vehicle introducing into that size of a market, and is just a pathfinder for Relativity as they work towards their Terran R rocket, which is their much larger launch vehicle that they hope to be able to do in the future. Ron, how many rockets have they built so far? This is their first one that they are flying. So this is the maiden flight of this vehicle. New rocket, new engine, and we're excited to see how today goes. That is a lot of ones on the screen there for the launch stats for this vehicle. First launch from this pad this year. First rocket for this year, first Terran 1, and first Relativity. So lots of firsts for it. You can see at the very top there, we are well into those 6,000s for total flights, and we're glad to see that number keep going. Mama, thanks so much for becoming a member. Appreciate that support there. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now 29 minutes, 27 seconds and counting until launch of Terran 1 on its on Relativity Space's maiden flight on a mission called Good Luck, Have Fun, launching from Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Looks like Relativity Space is going to get ready to go live here, so let's listen in to them for an update on the rocket once they play their intro here on how we are continuing towards the count. Now just T-minus 29 minutes and counting until liftoff of the world's largest and first 3D printed commercial rocket. Excited to see this lift off. This is the third launch attempt. We've even seen ignition occur during these launch attempts, but hopefully today we'll actually get it to see it clear Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral. Here we go. Let's listen in to Relativity Mission Control for an update as we count down T-minus 28 minutes, 30 seconds and counting till launch. Or they're going to play some music instead because they like to have a party. But there's the live view of the pad. We'll wait here for an update. There is Terran 1 fully fueled up, ready to go as we count down now 28 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting until launch. Let's listen in.
Welcome back to round 3. Thank you for joining us again from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where we are ready to launch Terran 1, the world's first 3D printed rocket. Today's flight is named Good Luck, Have Fun, or GLHF for short, and this is Relativity's first launch. We'll be bringing you live coverage from Launch Complex 16, which is our launch pad at Cape Canaveral, as we prepare for historic liftoff. I am Rachelle Aniceto, the Chief of Staff for the Vehicle Architecture and Technology team at Relativity Space. I support our Chief Architect, Kevin Wu, in the design, development, and product management of our medium to heavy lift reusable launch vehicle, Terran R.
And I'm Arwa Tazani Kelly, Technical Program Manager for Test and Launch at Relativity Space. I'm responsible for supporting the teams that design, build, and operate our test and launch sites across the country for both our Terran 1 and Terran R vehicles, including operations on the stages, engines, and propulsion components. Together, we'll be guiding you through our third launch attempt today. Now, if you joined us on March 11th during our second attempt, you know we came very close to launching with 2 aborts during terminal count. Here's a quick breakdown of the reasons for those aborts. During the first abort, we experienced an issue with the stage separation automation system a few seconds before T0 that properly aborted at T-minus 0.5 seconds. Then the team pushed an update to the vehicle automation system, successfully recycled the vehicle, and secured a new T0 time, which was during the last minute of our launch window. After recycling at T-minus 45 seconds, we had an automated abort on the second stage fuel pressure, which was only 1 psi outside of the limit. Let's hear more about our previous attempts from our chief engineer, James Harris.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We're T-minus 25 minutes, 48 seconds, and counting until launch. Relativity loves their music, so we're going to take this time to answer some of your guys' questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad as we continue through today's count. Question coming in from Daniel: is any part of this vehicle reusable? It is not. The Terran 1 is a expendable vehicle, but the Terran R that they hope to design following what they learned from Terran 1 will have reusability included on it. So really great question. Thanks for sending in. Amnito, what a roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster, and let's hope this is the final 25 minutes until we get to finally get to the top and enjoy the ride of the launch of Terran 1, and we're glad to have you joining us all here today. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, and share out the stream. It really does help us out, and we're glad to have you joining us here today. So we're now under 25 minutes and counting until launch. We're continuing to monitor those upper level winds in the range area, and they are still staying quite high, over 50 knots. But we'll be monitoring those as we go through the count. Right around the 20-minute mark, that's when we expect to hear that go, no go from their team to enter that terminal count. We saw that in the first few attempts. Between 15 to 20 minutes is when we heard that. So we'll be, of course, listening into mission control for that, and that's what will take us into that terminal account. As we've seen, this vehicle can scrub all the way down to 0.5 seconds left on the clock, so we'll be strapped in and ready to go on that roller coaster for today's flight. So a couple of people asking just what the knots are. 50 knots is 58 miles per hour or 92 kilometers per hour. So we're seeing some quite strong winds there. That is in the 13.5 kilometer range down to about the 12 kilometer range. Current temperatures down at the Cape though, 21 degrees Celsius. Light ground winds though. The ground winds aren't the issue. And of course we're well into the evening hours now as we're 23 minutes, 41 seconds and counting until launch. Let's listen back in.
Status update here. We are, as you see, holding the clock at T-minus 25 minutes. Our launch time right now is delayed due to two reasons. So we had the upper level wind shear being outside of stage 1 gimbal limits. However, the latest balloon data did show that it is now within acceptable limits, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that, and we'll hold the clock as necessary if needed closer to launch. However, now there is currently a boat in the range, so we are holding the clock and waiting for the range to clear that boat out of the hazard zone. We'll keep a close eye on it and give you an update shortly here once we know what happened.
And if you're just joining us, we're in a hold. The winds are good, and we have a boat. We have a boat in the range. This happened on a previous attempt, and we have it again. We've got our tracker up for you guys. This is a live look at boat radar for the area. Slick 16 is right here along the coastline. We do have a Coast Guard vessel right out here. That's right in that launch trajectory. So there is obviously a vessel somewhere right down here that we do not see, that is on the radar that they are currently monitoring for it, because we do have a couple Coast Guard vessels out in the region making sure that this area is safe. But some vehicle or vessel is right there in the range. So we're at about, we're holding at this point. We'll wait to see when we get this clock to resume. Hopefully they'll be able to clear that range pretty quickly. They did that last time, and last time they held it like a minute on the count when we had a boat. So hopefully we'll be able to resume quickly and get back into it. While we wait, we'll be answering your guys' comments and questions live. You can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live as we continue to hold at the 25-minute mark. There's a live look at Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. But you can keep sending in those questions. Want to say thank you to Justin. Thanks for becoming a member. And Mama, thanks for upgrading your membership there. We really do appreciate your guys' support. If you guys want to be part of the TLP community when there isn't a launch, we invite you to join us over on the TLP Discord. It's free to join. The link's there in the chat. That's where our TLP crew and community hang out in between launches, talk about space news, everything space. We also generally have some watch parties that go on during launches as well, so you're always welcome to jump in live comms and watch a launch together, because space is better together. So we invite you to join us over on our Discord. Links there in the chat. Peggy's asking, did you work at NASA before? I didn't. I would have loved to. Definitely would have been amazing to work for NASA, but I've followed it my whole life. I'm actually from Canada, so I'm a foreign national, which makes it a little bit harder to work for NASA, but excited to get to be able to cover everything space and not just one rocket company. It's always a lot more fun, and there's so much stuff happening these days, and that's why TLP exists. We exist to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and there is so much happening. We want to be here to help you bring it all into one place to stay up to date on all the launches, all the latest space and rocket tech, as well as all the latest space news, and that's why we launched the Launchpad News earlier this year, and you can follow along with our TLP articles at the tlpnetwork.com. We're glad to have that there. Also, if you guys are interested in joining our team, we do have our new application system open. There's applications for moderators, for writers, for journalists, as well as for our researchers, as we work to build the world's most complete database of all of space exploration history. We invite you to become part of our TLP volunteer crew and helping build that, so we can have that one perfect resource for everyone from around the world. So definitely check that out. We'll drop the link in the chat for that as well. If you're interested in joining us, anyone from around the world is invited to join that crew. We're excited to have welcomed some new people onto the crew today, and I'm excited to invite some more of you onto the crew here in the near future as well. If you're just joining us, though, we are at T-minus 25 minutes and holding until launch of Terran 1 due to a boat in the range. There was a boat violation for it. They do have a Coast Guard vessel out currently at this time clearing the range, and we'll wait for an update on them actually being able to resume the clock here today. Oops is asking, what is this boat about? Well, someone made an oops and went into an area that you are not allowed to fly. I'll see if we can find the exclusion zone for today's flight, so you guys can have an idea on where they actually are and are not meant to be able to approach during it today, but we are monitoring it here. So it's looking like it may be this vessel. We'll bring this back up on the screen here. It looks like it might be a little bit further downrange than we initially thought. We were looking originally right here along the range, but it looks like it might be this Coho vessel. The position was just received. It's an updated position. It is under movement for it here. Looks to be some sort of like barge-ish type thing, but it's underway. It's moving, but if you look at the trajectory of where that flight was going to go right here, it is right in line with where that flight is going to be. So they're going to be keeping an eye on that and waiting for that to clear the range. That's okay. We still have time in today's window. Taking a look back at the pad, since we're in a hold, we'll bring this back up here. We have 2 hours, 39 minutes, 30 seconds left in today's launch window, so we'll be keeping an eye on that time. We were holding at T-minus 25 minutes, still are, so when we resume that count, we'll see how much time we have left in the window and see if we're able to have a launch attempt here today. Again, if you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth right here on the launch pad. Also, make sure that you follow us over on our new channel, the Launchpad News. That's where we're going to be dropping our new TLP News video updates and our exclusive interviews. So make sure you join us over on that site as well. We'll drop that link in the chat here in just a moment as well. Catching up on the chat here as we continue catching in on your questions. Mike, you non-Florida people need to understand we Florida people like to get as close as possible to danger. I'm right there with you, Mike. The closer you can get to a launch, the more that rumble feel. It's pretty amazing. I've been lucky enough to be pretty close to a Starlink launch, and it's a Falcon 9's an amazing rocket, and SLS, whew, the rumble from that, you felt it in your bones, but it was pretty great to be. So I can understand getting closer. Michelle's asking, Zach, what's your background? It's a little bit harder to see in this framing, but in some of our video updates, you'll see this is one of this current studio background. It'll be going through some changes here. I'll be getting ready to head out on the road here in the very near future. We're getting ready to enter a very busy period of time with some exciting launches. We've got Starship, we've got Vulcan, we've got the second last Delta IV Heavy, we have the Boeing crewed flight test, we've got Axiom 2. We've got so many exciting launches coming up that I'm excited to jump on the road and bring you guys coverage live on location for some of these launches, as well as we grow our Rocket Chaser team down on site to bring you the best coverage of everything we can live on site with our new KSC correspondent. So excited to get those systems up and running so we can get you those live views, like tonight, having live views for the launch prior to Relativity going live. And the only reason we can do that is thanks to your guys' generous support. We're keeping a close eye on that radar and that boat radar to see how things are going. That boat, it's not really turning, it's continuing straight forward, so might be a little bit of time until it clears the range. But we've got time, just over 2.5 hours left in today's window. Let's listen in for an update.
Minutes for a boat in the hazard zone that we're waiting for the range to clear. While you're waiting here, I know that you see a big ball of fire next to our vehicle. I just wanted to tell you all that not to worry, that is on purpose. That's just our flare stack, and it's used to vent flammable gases from prop loading and venting operations and priming of the engine igniters. We're going to continue to hold until we have that update from the range.
Good clarification there that that is meant to happen for today's flight, something normal to see. We're working on getting you guys that updated graphic here on the range zoning that has been excluded. Once we have that, I'll bring that up onto screen here for you guys. I know our team is looking for it, as it does change slightly on each launch. But as if you're just joining us, welcome. We're at T-minus 25 minutes and holding due to a boat violation in the range. So we're keeping close eye on the pad, close eye on the boat radars, and hopefully we'll get a launch attempt here. Tyler Becker's asking, are you going to be at Starship? That is the plan. We are hoping they'll be able to make it down on site as long as we get a little bit more notice than 24 hours, making some plans to be able to head down there and watch from one of the zones, maybe even do a TLP meetup in advance or after it. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But it's hard to miss the Starship orbital flight test. So hoping that we'll have an opportunity to be down there. Maverick asking, why is it always the boats? There's a lot of boats down there. It's a busy area. People don't seem to know it's a rocket facility. It is one thing I'll have to say. If you are a smaller boat down there and you don't necessarily look at all the NOTAMs and all the range restrictions and everything, it's very easy just to sail out of the port and not necessarily know. There's one sign when you leave Port Canaveral. That's about it. There's no kind of lighting or anything along the coastline. Obviously, that's their responsibility, is to do that. They're supposed to be the captain of their ship, no matter how small it is. But unfortunately, not all of them do that. And that's why we see these range violations occur at a time. But because of it, we get these amazing views of Terran 1 fully fueled up there on the pad, ready to go here today. And we're working on catching up on your guys' questions. You can keep sending those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. I've got pulled up here, and we'll pull it up on the screen here in just a moment. This is a previous flight attempt. This was from the March 8th launch attempt for Terran 1 on the launch hazard zone. Should be quite similar for today's flight. There shouldn't be many changes that have occurred with this. So I'll pull this up on your screens here. There we go. So this pink zone, that is what we're watching, and that is right where that boat is extending. You can see it extends quite a ways out, 590 nautical miles offshore during that flight. There's obviously closer range restrictions for when it's actually on the pad, but taking a look out to it here using the marine tracker, there it is right off on the line here as well. We've got an updated one I will pull up here. Bear with me one moment. See if we can pull this onto the screen for you guys. It might not let me, but it's showing basically the same thing. That range off into the distance, that is where we're seeing that violation of that one ship. It is a narrow pass, so hopefully it will kind of clear that zone rather quickly, but definitely looks like this is the vessel that is causing us our range violation here this evening as we sit at T-minus 25 minutes and holding at this time. Jeremy's asking, what's the venting from the rocket? That is the super chilled propellants that they vent, just like we see on basically every rocket. We see venting when it's fully fueled. That is what we just see from them. Those are planned vents. The kind of condensation venting on the side, that is due to the temperature difference on the super chilled fuels on the inside, the condensation, and kind of just that difference. Just like when you have a really cold glass and you have your drink and you sometimes get that condensation, same sort of idea, but on the rocket here as well. Diana, did it launch already? Not yet. We're still on the pad, T-minus 25 minutes and holding due to a boat. So we're waiting for the Coast Guard to clear the range. And once they do that, we will have hopefully a launch attempt here today. We got some time, T-minus 2 hours, 31 minutes left in today's window. Noel's asking, really great question. Why don't they set up Coast Guards ahead to steer boats to avoid the situation? They do. It's just such a massive area for it when you really look at the range area that they have to cover. This whole coastline here, if we zoom in here a moment. Oop, let me bring it back on screen. This whole coastline here is what the Coast Guard has to track for launches, depending what pad that is being used. and we have trajectories that go basically straight north, almost straight south into the east. So there's a lot of difference with every flight. We do have this Coast Guard vessel out. We have another Coast Guard vessel up here. So they do have two, one on the north and one on the south side of that zone. But they are closer to the shore. This is still quite a distance off. You're talking of still a few miles offshore. This ship is actually quite a distance off of shore. We haven't actually had an update from it in a few minutes. 12 minutes ago, we got the last update from it. So we're not exactly sure on its current positioning. But if it was continuing north, it's going to be in that violation zone currently. And we'll hopefully see that clear off here in the next couple of minutes. But we'll take a look back at a live look of the pad. Andrew, how much weight do they have in the nose cone? So they've put a failed 3D print on board. I'm sure they'll show it to us once we get back into the count. Their first failed 3D print they have included in the nose cone. The nose cone is not normal for the Terran 1. That is just for today's flight. Normally we'll see a payload fairing like we're used to, but because it's a maiden flight, they have no payload, they went with a nose cone. The nose cone will not separate, it will not deploy that piece of printing junk that they've included on board today's flight. Checking in on what you guys think is going to happen today. If you haven't yet, take a moment, let us know in the poll. How do you think today's launch attempt is going to go? Are we going to have a perfect launch, a RUD during the first or second stage, or are we going to experience a scrub? Right now, just under 1,900 votes, and we got 42% think we're going to see a perfect launch, and 45% of you think we're going to scrub and have to go for a part 4. Well, we'll wait and see. We've got 2.5 hours left in the window, and hopefully that boat's going to clear out of the way here pretty quickly, and we'll get an attempt here. But glad to have you guys here with us. And Warner, yeah, exactly. They're not worried about the Coast Guard boats. They're worried about the bigger vessels. The Coast Guard boats know how to clear in time for that. That's why they're stationed on the north and the south of the exclusion zone. Alex, can you print one at home? You probably could print a small one. This is a metal rocket. It's a special metal that they have designed to be 3D printable. I believe it's about 85% of Terran 1 is 3D printed. So quite incredible that they are at that level of 3D printability. Jim Itrice is asking, what will the next launch be that you cover? That's a great question. If you guys want to know about all the upcoming launches, you can always head on over to tlpnetwork.com. That's where we have our launch control, and you can see all of the updates on the flight. You can see we're actually in sequence right now. That's why this one's not green like normal. But we've got today's flight. On the upcoming schedules, we've got a launch out of Russia. Most likely won't have coverage for that. Russia hasn't been giving a lot of coverage lately. We've got Electron going for an attempt on March 24th. We got Starlink 5-5 on the 24th as well. We've got India launching their GSLV rocket carrying OneWeb. That's their second OneWeb flight. That's on the 25th. Another launch out of Russia on the 29th, and we'll see if anything more gets confirmed. That Virgin Orbit flight, that's not going to happen this month. They are holding on for dear life to even be a company. So that is definitely going to slip. But currently it is holding a date in March. And as you can see, April's going to be a busy month and a lot of exciting launches in April. We've got Starship. We've got the launch of Juice. We got Transporter. We got the crewed Starliner test. As I said, Starship. We've got another Firefly flight. We've got a Falcon Heavy. We've got a Delta IV Heavy. We've got a PSLV. Got a bunch of ones out of Russia and China as well. So it's going to be a busy month of launches. And we'll be working, bringing you the best possible coverage of most of those. Russian ones are hard, but generally if it's out of the United States or Europe, we'll be able to get you covered. And we also bring you coverage of India, Australia, and New Zealand. And we do keep an eye out for the ones out of Russia and China. When there are available cameras, then we do bring you those live coverage. Tyler's asking an interesting question here. How much does it cost to retry after a scrub? So the biggest cost that they would have if they have to have a scrub would be the lost propellant, the longer they sit there and it's venting, the more propellant they are wasting. They are able to detank and save propellant should they have a scrub, but no matter what, you're going to be staying there, you're going to be venting, you're going to be losing propellant. So that would most likely be the largest cost, and then staff. The time of your actual crew, the Coast Guard crews, and all of that type of stuff that has been put into place is going to have a cost as well. While we wait for an update from Relativity, we'll bring it up one more time just as an update, because I know some new people are just joining us. But if you hadn't heard, here at TLP, we have announced our first mission to the moon. We're super excited to announce LUNEX 1, Lunar Exploration 1, because exploration is better together. We are sending a payload to the lunar surface with astrobotics. We'll be announcing more about the launch date and rocket and the lunar lander in the near future, but we want you guys to join us on board. So you can send your name and your family's names, your dog's names, your friends, your teachers, all for free. Send as many names as you want, and you can do so by heading over to Lunex, tlpnetwork.com/Lunex1, or we'll drop the link in the chat there for you guys as well. Send those names in. You'll get a name plaque to guarantee that you've been registered right away. And then once we announce the vehicle and launch date and we reveal our mission patch, you'll be sent your LUNEX 1 boarding pass. They'll be similar to what you see here on your screen. But if you want to upgrade your payload, you can actually send a photo or a video on board. Photos are $5, and you can include you or as many people as you want in that one photo, or you can send videos up to 30 seconds. You can do that all through the website. Those will all be downloaded into our payload and loaded up onto a lunar lander and stored on the lunar surface as a way to inform and inspire the future generations that everyday people are now being able to send payloads to the moon, and we're excited to have you guys joining us on that mission. This is the first. We've got more in the works for future years as well, and we're super excited for partnering with Astrobotic on this opportunity, and we'll send out more updates as we go. But tlpnetwork.com/Lunex1. We're keeping an eye here. We do have an updated T0 time, T0 of 23:05 Eastern time. We have updated our clock, and we have that clock running. We are now T-minus 28 minutes and counting. Now, our clock, you can see, is running. Relativity's is still holding. The reason why is we use an L- clock. They are using a T- clock. T- clocks, we saw this with SLS and Artemis 1. T- clocks count operational things. They can pause. You could be at T- 25 minutes and holding for so long, and then resume the count. L-, that's your real world time. So you can see that that's why our clock is running, and our clocks will sync within a few seconds of theirs, but once they hit and start counting their clock, that's why we're running. So you'll see us run down to T- 25, and then we'll match up together and go for a launch attempt here. That's a great sign that they have been able to clear the range, or are expecting the range to be clear. Winds are looking like they are trending green for flight, so we are going to go for a launch attempt here in 27 minutes, 42 seconds from now, but we're glad to have you all joining us here. If it's your first time, though, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from, and subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. We're glad to have you with us. There's some incredible views of the pad here this evening. We weren't sure what it was going to look like being in the evening hours, but some great views of Terran 1. Those what kind of snow and ice crystals falling off, that's normal. This is a super chilled rocket, so that ice is condensating on the side, and when it gets heavy enough or there's a slight vibration, it breaks off, and that is normal to see here. We've got people tuning in all over here. We got Mike in Buffalo, Ginger's in Lakewood, Washington. Great to have you here. SML is in California. We've got Diane in the Philippines. Thanks for being here. Edward's in California. Jeffrey's in Ontario, Canada. Great to see another Canadian. Thanks for being here. And as we continue now, watching that time there, we should see Relativity's clock resume here just over a minute and a half, and that's when I expect that we will get an update from their team. You can see a large flare there from their flare stack. Don't worry, that fire is normal. That is meant to be there. That is part of their launch system. We got MJ in Philadelphia. Ryan's in New Mexico. Ian is at home. Great to have you here. Alex is in Florida. Ricky's in Tennessee. If you guys do happen to live anywhere along the Space Coast and you're watching today, make sure when you've got a couple minutes left in the count, head on outside. If you guys take photos or videos of today's flight, make sure you send us those over on Twitter, tagging us TLPN_official, or join our Discord, and you can drop that in the chat there. Depending how the stream goes, we might be able to pull up some of those on the air to show, or at least retweet them over on Twitter. We'll drop both of those in the chat there. 40 seconds or so, and we'll be resuming count with Relativity as we continue for a launch attempt here of the world's first and largest 3D printed commercial rocket on its maiden flight. Everything's looking great out in the range, though. Keeping an eye on that boat that's out in the zone, seeing if it's cleared off. But if they have set a new T0, they definitely have. Interesting. We actually have, I'll quickly do this here. We actually have 2 boats now listed. We've got a tug and a special craft listed, and we've got Coho. Actually, that tug and special craft is probably the Coho. And it's just outside of the zone where we get different data. So you can see there it's cleared, and that's the trajectory. So it is well clear of the trajectory of today's rocket, and that's why we're resuming the count. And there you can see they have resumed their count. We'll sync our clocks with them just a second, and let's listen into an update.
Clock is rolling. We are just under T minus 25 minutes now. We did receive confirmation that propellant loading is complete for both stages. We're going to keep an eye out on those upper level winds and on the range today, but the vehicle is healthy. So as of now, we're proceeding with 2305.
Thank you, Arwa. Arwa will continue to provide regular status updates over the course of the countdown. In the top left of your screen, you can continue to find our countdown clock to follow along in our pre-launch operations.
And now a quick reminder about the purpose of Good Luck, Have Fun. This is a first launch, meaning that while we're aiming for Terran 1 to reach orbit, our primary focus is on gathering the data and learnings necessary to develop Terran R, our much larger, medium to heavy lift, reusable launch vehicle. The lessons learned from this mission will also enable us to improve our software-driven approach to manufacturing.
And as a reminder, today's launch includes many firsts. Terran 1 is the first 3D printed rocket, which is 85% 3D printed by mass. It's in a race to become the first Methalox-propelled rocket to achieve orbit. If orbit is achieved, Relativity will also become the first venture-backed space company to have successfully reached orbit on its first flight.
And it's worth noting that while Terran 1 will be capable of lifting 1,250 kilograms into low Earth orbit, or LEO, today's launch doesn't have a customer payload. We do, however, have a memento aboard, one that's quite unique to Relativity that we'll tell you more about later.
Liftoff is currently scheduled about 22 minutes from now. This estimation may change as we continue to work through our countdown, but we will keep you updated along the way. Today's launch window lasts for 3 hours, and this provides us more time to troubleshoot any issues that could arise. And if any unforeseen issues arise during the countdown, we can pause the launch sequence if necessary, as you've just seen.
The window for today's launch attempt opened up at 2200 Eastern Time. The pad was cleared of all personnel at T-minus 4 hours, followed by the start of propellant loading, which has since been completed. We're now topping off our tanks and conditioning our propellant to the proper temperatures ahead of launch. Now at approximately T-minus 20 to T-minus 15 minutes, the launch director will poll the launch teams to ensure that all subsystems, weather, and the range are go for terminal count. Terminal count will then begin at T-minus 70 seconds, and that's when the vehicle's internal flight computer will take control of the countdown. Now while we wait for T0, let's talk about the process that got us here.
Good Luck, Have Fun is the maiden launch of our 3D printed Terran 1 rocket. Terran 1 is an orbital class rocket, so reaching orbit would be the best possible outcome. But as you've heard us say before, we are truly looking for some important base hits here today. Notably, a key objective for today's flight is largely about proving our hypothesis that 3D printing is a viable way to manufacture a rocket and it can successfully withstand the pressures of flight. Through robust ground testing, we're confident that we have a real shot at proving just that. So the more data that we collect from this flight means that we'll have access to more insights, and this will give us the confidence that we're able to execute on Terran R and help us solve all the hard problems that come with building a medium to heavy lift reusable rocket. As a business, we're following a Pathfinder product development approach. So the Terran 1 that you see on the pad today has always been our Pathfinder. It was designed to be a development platform for Terran R, and it has served us exceedingly well to date in that capacity as we've progressed through printing and testing ahead of today's launch. Arwa, let's remind everyone what we would call a success for today's launch.
Absolutely. Again, safely clearing the pad, getting out over the ocean, and passing the point of maximum dynamic pressure, or max Q, would be a big milestone for today's launch. This is again because it's the point where the structural loads on the vehicle are the highest, making it one of the most challenging phases of flight. And this is the point in flight where we really want to prove much of what has already been proven on the ground. During acceptance testing, the vehicle withstood loads even beyond what we anticipate it will encounter during flight. So passing this milestone would effectively demonstrate that 3D printed rockets are structurally viable. And then if we make it even further to stage separation, we will have achieved a full first stage flight, and that'll be another big accomplishment for the team. From there, we'll attempt to light the second stage and get Terran 1 to orbit.
Stage 2 is targeting a 200 kilometer by 210 kilometer orbit, and this is not a traditional orbital target, but that is our target for today given this is our first launch and not a customer mission. As a reminder, we do not have a customer payload on this flight since it's not a customer mission. So instead, we are celebrating how far we've come by mounting our first ever metal 3D print from the first generation Stargate printer inside of Terran 1's nose cone. Of course, it was a failed print since no one had done it before. Let's go ahead and take a look at this memento. So that piece that you're seeing there is about 6.5 inches in diameter and weighs about 3.3 pounds. That is our first completed circular test article for which we used our first generation aluminum alloy. Since then, we've added a machined centerpiece with the GLHF and our mitosis logo to commemorate this maiden launch. We would be excited to see this memento get to orbit. But to take a step back and set expectations, we want to note that we are unsure how much of the second stage flight we will be able to share with you live. While we do have cameras on board, we will be prioritizing vehicle telemetry sensor data for this launch in order to maximize our learnings, and as a result, the video connection could be spotty. In the event that we do lose video, we will do our best to keep you up to date as we receive telemetry and information live.
And once again, we have strict safety protocols in effect for today's flight and are of course closely coordinating with the FAA and Space Launch Delta 45. These protocols are standard for all launches and ensure that no one would be in harm's way if there were to be an anomaly. Now, from our very first failed print 7 years ago, it's taken a relentless focus on innovation and almost countless iterations to get to where we are today. The world's first 3D printed rocket on the launch pad here at Cape Canaveral. And like the first print, Terran 1 is the first step of many towards making humanity a multiplanetary species. Now, as a reminder, our primary objective for today is to gather as much data as possible to help develop our future vehicles, including Terran R, our larger medium to heavy lift reusable launch vehicle.
Up next in our countdown will be the go, no-go for launch, which is expected to occur in the next several minutes. Let's take in some views of Terran 1 under the lights of Launch Complex 16 while we wait to hear from Mission Control.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now just under 17 minutes and counting until launch of Relativity Space and their Terran 1 rocket. They just told you a bunch about the 3D printing, so we won't repeat that, but we're glad to have you joining us here. If you haven't yet, take a moment, share out the stream, and invite people to join us for today's third attempt at making history with Terran 1. We're glad to have you here. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. We are monitoring the comms, listening in for when they'll do that go, no go to enter the terminal count, expecting that in the next couple of minutes here. And when we hear that, we will, of course, listen in. You're looking at a live view of Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Weather is looking good. Range is cleared. And then we are ready for a launch attempt here tonight. If it's your first time here, though, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. Always live and always free, so make sure you subscribe. And take a moment, engage that like button. I know it's annoying to hear, but it's free, and it really does help us out. It helps YouTube share this with more people as we count down now 15 minutes, 40 seconds and counting until hopefully history is made here today. Once we enter terminal count, some of those next major milestones we'll watch for is the retracting of that strong back. Let's listen in. Waiting that go, no go to begin to enter terminal count. L minus 15 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. Clear night. L minus 15 minutes. Should hear the mission control pick up the net here momentarily. Just watching that audio because they love to have their music at Relativity. And if you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in. We'll work on answering them to the best of our abilities. Peter Parker asking, do upper level winds only impact small and medium sized rockets?
We are currently standing by for the go, no go polls from mission control. This should occur in the next several minutes.
So what we were already doing. Great question, Peter. Thanks for sending that in. All rockets have a wind condition on what they're able to fly in. That's they all have different ones. So the larger the rocket, the more friendly winds can be. The more wind there can be because they're normally stronger. But they all do have a point where it's violation. For the Space Coast, normally what we see as a violation is clouds or lightning rule, not just winds. Dale, thank you so much for that super chat with the happy face. Appreciate your support. That goes right back into bringing us the best possible equipment coverage that we can do to bring you guys the best possible coverage of everything space. So thank you so much. If you're just joining us, though, welcome. We are now under 14 minutes and counting, awaiting for a go, no go in mission control to enter the terminal count for the launch of Terran 1 on its maiden flight. Good luck, have fun. You're looking at a live view of Slick 16 where we have a fully fueled rocket ready to go. We're waiting to enter that terminal count. We've been here 2 times, well, more than 2 times, 2 days of times before, and hopefully third time is the charm. Ryan's asking, what if it goes boom at max Q? That is why we have a cleared range. Just in case debris does come down at any point, that is why they have cleared a 590 nautical miles stretch to the east along the trajectory of today's flight that will be able to be clear of vehicles and vessels, that if there is debris, they'll just fall to the ocean. We, of course, don't hope we see an explosion today. We hope we see a good launch. But that is a possibility as it is a test flight. Michelle's asking, how does the rocket land? Water or pad? It is not reusable, so it will eventually splash down into the ocean. It will be going... Let's listen in. Here we go.
We are going to pause the clock at T-minus 10 minutes to assess high-level winds. We'll update briefly with a new T0 time once we get new balloon data.
And they are launching a new balloon. We are going to hold. We are still counting clock for the next 2 minutes.
From our launch director, Clay Walker, we are going to hold the clock at T-minus 10 minutes. We're currently evaluating those upper level winds and just make sure that the wind shear is okay with our stage 1 gimbal limits. We're going to coordinate with the range and make sure we have the proper data that is within acceptable limits before we have a new T0. Stand by.
And if you're just joining us, welcome. We are at L minus 11 minutes, 40 seconds and counting. When we hit that L minus 10 minute mark, we are going to enter now a planned, planned, unplanned hold due to upper level winds. We'll pull it up here very quickly on the screen and listen in for updates. But those upper level winds continuing to play, taking a look, 50 knot winds at the 13.5 kilometer level. But as you come down, they actually get stronger. At 10 kilometers, we got 54 knots, and then they slow down 9,000 meters. We got 7,000 meters. But right in that upper 10 to 15 kilometer range, 11.7 kilometers up, they're peaking at 59 knots. Now, obviously, they're going to be flying down range, so you're going to monitor that as they fly out over the ocean there. But kind of right along that trajectory line is where they've got this ridge of higher winds in the upper levels. So they're just right there on kind of a front. Looking down at the surface level winds, though, we're still good. Very light winds. We noticed this when we were getting ready for the pre-show. If you look here, there's the surface level winds traveling from the right to the left of your screen. We go up to the upper level winds, they are traveling the absolute opposite direction. So not only is the rocket going to have to deal with winds high winds, it's going to have to deal with rocket changing wind directions while in flight. So they do need to monitor that as well.
25 p.m. Eastern. We're going to wait for that final confirmation from the range, and then we'll pick up our T-clock accordingly at 23:15.
And we're working on getting that update. We are at a hold, T-minus 10 minutes and holding at this time. We'll sync our clock here in just a moment. But if you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live while we wait for an update here. They are going to be launching here a new weather balloon to get more updates on the current wind conditions, on those upper level conditions. Those do take a few minutes there. Sounded like possibly a new T0 there at 25, but we're just working to verify on what that T0 is looking. Okay, they are awaiting confirmation from the range. They are targeting 11:25 p.m. Eastern time at the new T0. That would be 30 minutes from now. So that is what we are seeing, a 30-minute delay. That will take us into today's window, bringing that window clock back onto your screen. We are now approaching 1 hour into today's launch window, which will take us, if we have a 30-minute delay, taking us halfway through today's launch window. So going to be starting to run that clock on the risk of, if they do get later into the count, they won't be able to recycle. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. We are T-minus 10 minutes and holding due to upper level winds. Jeremy, how long will it take to print a new ship? They haven't released a lot of information on how long it took them to print Terran 1. We know it's been out at the pad for ages. When I was there in August, the first stage of Terran 1 was out at the pad for testing. So this has been a long journey to flight for them. It was amazing to see it out on the pad back then. Let's listen in.
Continue to hold. Let's take a moment for those that missed the previous broadcast to do a refresher about the Terran 1 architecture. Let's go ahead and look at Terran 1 on a graphic up on the screen. So starting from the left-hand side of the vehicle, this is the bottom where we have the 9 Aeon 1 engines. In our previous broadcast, we talked about these engines getting printed using powder bed fusion or PBF technology. Each of these engines has a thrust capability of 23,000 pounds at sea level. This gives us a max total liftoff thrust of more than 200,000 pounds. The Aeon 1 engine is designed with a gas generator cycle, and we have thrust vector control actuators, or TVCAs, mounted on these engines in order to gimbal the vehicle during flight. We have completed more than 2,000 engine hot fires and over 10,900 seconds of runtime across Aeon 1 hot fire tests. The Aeon 1 engines are attached to the vehicle through the thrust structure. This is what takes the load from the thrust of the engines. And above the thrust structure is the stage with WAM printed tanks. This is our wire arc additive manufacturing in-house process. These tanks hold liquid oxygen on the top and liquid natural gas on the bottom. These tanks are pressurized during flight using an autogenous pressurization system. This works by running propellant through heat exchangers mounted on our engines, which convert the liquid propellant into a gaseous state, and this is piped into the top of the tanks to maintain our ullage pressure, or the required pressure for the tanks. Above the Stage 1 tanks is the WAM printed interstage, and this holds our stage separation mechanisms that separate Stage 2 from Stage 1 during flight. This is a pneumatic pusher system. And above the interstage is Stage 2, which has a single Aeon vacuum engine that is also printed with PBF. This engine has a thrust capability of more than 25,000 pounds in vacuum and has...
Announcement on countdown, this is the LD. We have coordinated a new UTC target time of 03:25:00. Clock will jump back to T-minus 16 minutes for go, no, go poll. And we'll begin count shortly thereafter.
Okay, there was that official confirmation of the new launch time of 23:25 Eastern. We are going to roll back the clock shortly to T-minus 16 minutes so we can go ahead and resume our go, no-go polling with our team of engineers and mission control, and we'll do that in alignment with 23:25.
And I'm going to quickly interject while they continue on there. As you can see above me, our clock has begun running again, L-minus 25 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting. That is now set to the new T0. Again, we use an L-minus clock here on the launch pad because that gives you a real-world time to the T0 we are looking at. They are using a T-minus clock, which is an operational clock that can hold at periods of time. We set a time 25 minutes from now, but they're holding at T-minus 16. Once our clock gets to 16, they will go together. So just so you know, that's why our clock is running. We are now 24 minutes, 35 seconds, and counting until the next launch attempt. They have confirmed with the range another launch attempt here with that T0. They're continuing to monitor those upper level winds. We're going to take some time and answer your questions live that you keep sending in the chat, so you can keep sending those at the launch pad. We're working on catching up on those. Vente Coffee, is there a weather balloon? They've been launching balloons all evening as they continue through today's count. Sad Squares asking, if this launch does get scrubbed, when would the next launch be? We do not have an updated, we don't have like a 24-hour recycle. There's no payload on board, so it's more about the availability of the range and why there was a scrub. So Relativity would ultimately be the one to make that decision. Last time we saw them do about a 3-day delay, and then we saw about a week or more here now in between. So that would be something we expect to hear that within a few hours of them if they were to lose today's window and have to go for another attempt. Maximum's asking, what's the purpose of today's mission? This is a maiden flight, so there is no necessarily purpose. There's no payload on board. Answering John Fair's question, what's the cargo? There is no payload fairing. As they zoom in here, you'll see as they pan up to the top, there's no normal fairing like we see on a rocket that can separate and release a payload. It just has a nose cone. Inside that nose cone, they did put a failed 3D print on board just to send something with some weight up, but it will not be deploying. The nose cone will stay attached to the second stage. But today's flight's purpose is to prove that this can fly. This is the first time a 3D printed rocket of this size, a commercial launch vehicle, is preparing to fly. Over 85% of Terran 1 is 3D printed. New engine, new rockets, new tanks. It's proving a whole new concept on how to be able to build a vehicle. And this is a test bed. If this works with Terran 1, they're going to build Terran R, which is going to be a much larger vehicle that is able to be reused, and we will see in the future. But this is a test bed for them to prove that the 3D printed rockets do work. Catching up on your guys' chat here. Thanks so much for sending those in. Knight says, you rock. Thanks for being here. Appreciate that. Ryan Cool Boy is asking, do you play KSP? I play KSP 1. I do play that. Valley Forge, natural gas engines on the first stage. Isn't that unusual? This is a new rocket with new engines and everything. So we are seeing a number of things that would be technically unusual with this. It's unusual to see a 3D printed rocket. And he's asking, how tall is this rocket compared to SpaceX Falcon 9? Really great question for it. I'll go full screen here for a moment, and we'll pull up our statistics on the stats for Terran 1 to give you an idea on the height of it here. There you go. On screen, you can see there the heights of Terran 1. 32 meters tall, or 105 feet, with a diameter of 2.3 meters, or 7.5 feet. Excuse me. To give you an idea in difference, Falcon 9 is 3.7 meters in diameter, and it is 70 meters tall. There we go. Pulled it up on your screen there. So you can see the difference. So it is quite diameter-wise. We're not talking necessarily a huge difference, but that height-wise, that is where we are seeing that difference for the vehicle. But when they go to Terran R, that's where we're expecting a much larger vehicle similar to Falcon 9. Let's listen back in as an update. So we are now continuing towards, there's the Terran R stats, as we continue 20 minutes and counting till launch. They're just continuing to have a party in Mission Control. We're expecting to listen in to an update from Mission Control as they go into their go, no-go polling. That is expected to begin at that right about that T-minus 16 minute mark. So again, you can see our clocks are running. We will sync with them as they are at T-minus clock as we continue towards this new T0 of 35 minutes after the top of the hour, or 25 minutes after the top of the hour, or 20 minutes from now. Again, take a moment, share out the stream, let people know we're back into it. The clock is running. We are going for another attempt here. They are continuing to monitor those upper level winds as today continues. I saw a couple people asking, including Aston Greenheart. Thanks for sending in your question. When it launches, where will it be visible from somewhere that a SpaceX launch normally is? That's a great question for it. Within reason, because it's a night launch, you're going to have a much better opportunity of seeing tonight's launch visible. There are 9 engines on the base of Terran 1, but they are smaller engines. So you might not see this as far up and down the coastline, but we are expecting, if you're within a few hours of the Space Coast, you should be able to see at least a light orange streak through the sky. Definitely a great opportunity to try out long exposure shot or head outside and see if you can see that little orange dot flying through the sky. Definitely, if you have a cleared night like we've been hearing it is down on the Space Coast, that you should be able to see today within a few hours of the launch site as well. It is heading straight to the east. So for those that are used to crew launches that go kind of more northward, following North America's coastline, it's not going to be as clear as that. This is going straight to the east, closer to what we saw with Artemis, where it just straight to the east. So if you do see Terran 1 flying and take photos or videos, make sure you send it to us on Twitter. You can take us, we'll put our Twitter in the chat there for you guys. But also consider joining us over on the TLP Discord. It's free for anyone to join, and I know we had a watch party going on for a little bit. I think it might still be going on for today's flight, but you're welcome to jump in general or live comms and watch the flight here together as we now count down just over 18 minutes and counting till launch. But if you see today's flight, drop those photos and videos in Discord, and we might have a chance to bring some of those up here on air. Continuing through some of your questions. Norman, how do you stay awake? Excitement. This is a roller coaster. Hopefully we get to see Terran 1 leave the pad here today. It's also not too bad. It's only 9 o'clock for me tonight. Artemis 1, I was up through the night for that a couple times. So today's a pretty lax day. So we're doing pretty good. Michael's asking, what's my favorite rocket? Just making sure we're listening into the control nets. We are now about a minute and a half away from syncing our clocks and getting that T0 clock running again. Favorite rocket? Ooh. That's a hard one because I have favorites of eras. Then I have favorites of what I've seen fly. I'm kind of picky. Falcon 9 is always going to have a place in my heart. That was the first rocket I ever saw fly. And Artemis 1 was just special because it was such a historic mission, and the fact that we got to be that close It was really an honor of being this brand new, of launching the launch pad 2 years and getting to be part of that. Thanks again to NASA for inviting us. Like that's going to be top, and we're excited for Artemis 2 and 3 coming up very, very quickly. So those would probably be my top two. When Starship flies, we might have to reevaluate these standings. So we'll wait to see what happens here. Michael's asking, what's the little flame flare? That is for them to vent off their propellants on the pad. We are 30 seconds away from syncing clocks and resuming the T-minus clock countdown. A couple of people asking where I live. I'm actually up in Canada, but we have an amazing team of people around the country in Canada, United States, and over in UK and Europe that make TLP possible. And if you guys are interested in joining the team, we do have our applications open. You can click the link in the chat there. Send an application. We're looking for more researchers and journalists to join the TLP News and Data team. And we're looking, we'll also have our moderator and rocket chaser application open as well. The clocks have been synced. T-minus 15 minutes, 53 seconds, and counting. We're going to be listening in to Mission Control here to do that go, no, go.
Is rolling. We are less than 16 minutes away.
So we have that party music going as we are now 15 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting until launch of today. We are listening in. Here we go.
For launch, please provide concurrence to proceed in the launch countdown with go, no, go. VC, VC go. GC1, GC1 go. GC2, GC2 go. Ground, ground go. AVI, AVI go. FTS, FTS go. RF, RF go. GNC, GNC go. Flight software, flight software go. Thermal, thermal go. Prop 1, prop 1 go. Prop 2, prop 2 go. Fluids 1, fluids 1 go. Fluids 2, fluids 2 go. Loads, loads is go. Rock, ranges go. OSM, RC, RC go. Vehicle, vehicle is go. CE, CE is go. LC, LC is go. All parties have reported go for launch countdown. Once the clock begins to roll, anyone can call for a hold at any time. A hold is called prior to T-minus 70 seconds. The T-clock will continue to roll until T-minus 70, at which point a hold will automatically be initiated. A hold is not possible after T-minus 70, and any hold call after that will result in a terminal count abort. Should a hold manual be necessary, the person calling for a hold or abort should state clearly on comms, hold, 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 or abort, abort, abort. In the event that OSM requires a hold, OSM will initiate the hold command on the OSM GUI and notify LD and RC on primary net.
And you just heard our launch director complete the go, no-go polling with our mission control team. As you heard, all systems are currently healthy, so as of now, we're able to proceed with our scheduled launch time in just about 13 minutes.
Throughout today's live stream, you've been hearing callouts from Mission Control. Let's take a moment to introduce you to our Mission Control team. Clay Walker, who you just heard, Launch Director. John Wiswall, Launch Conductor. James Harris, Chief Engineer. Elijah Escobedo, Vehicle Controls. Brian Batters and Zoe Dickard on Ground Control. Bill Stack, Ground. And Joy Mosdell, Range Coordinator. These are a few notable members also from leadership are supporting today's launch here at Launch Control. And this includes our co-founder and CEO, Tim Ellis, our Chief Operating Officer who leads product execution, Zach Dunn, Vice President of Test and Launch, Don Katterbeck, and Director of CAPE Operations, Pat Svatek. These are among the many, many others who are making today's launch happen. Let's go ahead and take a moment to pause and listen in for any other updates from Mission Control.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad.
A little bit more info about the systems that we're seeing on the pad once again. So the rocket rolls out of the hangar horizontally and is then lifted vertically by the transporter erector. That's the black vertical truss structure that you see behind the rocket there. The 4 large towers surrounding the pad make up our lightning protection system. They protect the vehicle from any direct lightning strikes. Inside of those, you'll see 4 small black posts around the pad called rainbirds. They're used for acoustic mitigation for the rocket and do so by covering the pad with water to dampen the reflected acoustics at liftoff. The small flame that you see there at the bottom right hand of your screen was once again the flare stack. No need to worry, this is perfectly intentional. It burns off flammable gases from propellant loading, venting operations, and priming of the engine igniters. It's a little harder to see, but the small slide-looking structure beneath the vehicle is our water-cooled flame diverter. It's used to mitigate the heat from lighting the engines, and it directs exhaust plumes away from the vehicle. You might also be able to see in this view 3 different levels under the rocket. So the largest and lowest level is the pad deck, and directly above it is the launch table. So this is where the launch mount pins to the pad and creates that flame duct. The launch mount on top of it is one component of the transporter erector, so it transfers loads into the pad deck during hot fire tests and engine ramp up at launch. It also contains the release system or hold downs and the quick disconnect or QD carriages that provide propellant and other commodities to the vehicle when it's on the ground. I do once again want to give a big shout out to the ground crews out here for all of their hard work. They've helped us build and operate this launch infrastructure and supported vehicle integration and testing. And of course, they helped us prepare the vehicle again for this 3rd attempt. So thank you all so much for all of your incredible work.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking at a live view of Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where we are counting down to launch of the world's largest 3D printed rocket, over 85% 3D printed, and the maiden flight of Relativity Space's Terran 1, T-minus 10 minutes and counting until launch. The range is go, weather is go, the rocket is go, and we'll continue listening in to the control net as we continue through today's count. As always, take a moment, make sure you engage that like button and share out the stream as we are now into terminal count. Also, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another live launch coverage, docking, undocking, or return to Earth. Following launch, consider joining us over on our TLP Discord. That's where our community hangs out. Following post-launch, we'll always jump in general and kind of hang out there, answer some more questions, and talk about how the launch was. We are now T-minus 9 minutes, 25 seconds, and counting.
T-minus 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Now in the next few minutes until launch, you'll hear callouts from our engineers and mission control as we go through the final procedural steps before liftoff. We'll be pressing the tanks, priming the igniters, doing the final engine checkouts, retracting the strongback, and then getting that final go for launch. We're currently proceeding with the launch time of 11:25 Eastern. That is 23:25 Eastern. Let's continue to listen in.
T-minus 8 minutes, 50 seconds, and counting until launch. Everything remaining nominal towards today's flight. Continuing to listen to the control nets. At this point, if we hear any holds, that's not something we want to hear, but they are monitoring, taking a look at our weather, our marine traffic. It looks like everything in the range is clear. We did have that violation earlier, but everything continuing to trend towards a good liftoff attempt here. Now 8 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting. Garbage is asking, how do you think Terran 1 will hold up through max Q with it being 85% 3D printed? That's where I think if we see an issue today.
All right, we're pressurizing the propellant tanks to flight pressures with helium. As a reminder, during flight, we'll pressurize the tanks using autogenous pressurization.
And you just heard their engine chill. They are preparing to begin that.
As you can see from these epic views, we are launching at night today, but in terms of our vehicle, it doesn't make a difference if we're launching during the day or at night. The systems operate the same. You are able to see those white clouds a little bit more clearly now. So that big white cloud you're seeing come out of the strongback is due to strongback chill operations. So we're chilling all of the ground equipment to try to get our locks as cold as possible for stage 2. Those smaller white clouds that you saw earlier coming out of the vehicle at different levels are due to the venting of the chilled gas from the rocket. And that venting into the humid Florida air out here is what causes the gas to condense into vapor and look like clouds. You can also see the frost on the rocket and what looks to be small white pieces falling off. That's all just ice, and it's because of the chilled propellant inside. It's so cold that you'll see ice falling off the vehicle.
Stage 2 igniter is configured for priming.
Arwa, let's walk through the launch timeline now that we're getting closer.
Yeah, at T-minus 70 seconds, the vehicle will go into terminal count, and this is when the vehicle's internal flight computer takes control of the countdown. We'll then go into final flight termination checks and get FTS go from the launch conductor in coordination with the mission flight control officer and operations safety manager. At T-minus 6 seconds, we're going to see that blue fire and have ignition of those 9 beautiful 3D printed Aeon 1 engines. And then at T0, we will have liftoff and Terran 1 will fly. Shortly after, at T plus 2 seconds, the strong back will throw back to assist in removing the umbilicals and clear the path for the vehicle to fly. And then at T plus 12 seconds, we'll begin our pitch over program. So we'll go downrange in an easterly direction over the Atlantic Ocean. And then at T plus 80 seconds is that very important milestone of max Q, where the structural loads on the vehicle are the highest.
At approximately T plus 160 seconds, we'll get to main engine cutoff, or MECO, where the stage 1 engines will shut off. This is followed shortly by stage separation, and the Aeon vacuum engine will ignite on the second stage. Second stage will burn for a little under 5 minutes. Then at approximately 463 seconds, we'll get to second engine cutoff, or SECO. We'll go ahead and tune back in to mission control.
Flight computer and vertical leveling.
As a reminder, GLHF is our maiden launch, so what we're really looking for here is to learn as much as possible and demonstrate the product concept. The big milestone will be reaching that point of maximum dynamic pressure, or max Q.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking at a live view of Slick 16 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where we are now counting down to launch of Terran 1, T-minus 4 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting until liftoff. The vehicle is go, the range is go, and weather is go, as we attempt a maiden flight of Terran 1 on its mission. Good luck, have fun. If you haven't yet, take a moment, share out the stream, invite people to join us for this maiden launch. As always, here at the launch pad, during the final minutes of the count, we want to see a go, no go in the chat. If you're a TLP member, don't forget you can use those custom emojis. As this is a maiden flight, we're going to listen in to the final minutes here of the comms a little bit earlier than we normally do. So the last thing to say is, Terran 1, good luck, have fun.
Slowly release stage 2 so the strong back can retract. You can see the arms opening up there.
Stage 1 TVC checkouts running.
And now you'll be able to see the stage 1 engines gimbaling or tilting, as you see, while we're completing those final thrust vector control health checks.
Stage 1 is on internal power.
The strong back will be retracting shortly here.
Strong back is retracting.
There you go. We're retracting that black truss structure to prepare for
Stage 2 TVC checkouts.
for umbilical separation now that both stages are on internal power, and now we're doing those final thrust vector control health checks on the upper stage.
Starting final review of launch commit criteria.
Wow, we are very closely approaching T-minus 1 minute. I just want to remind all of us here that what you're looking at on your screen is 85% 3D printed, and it is about to fly. Next up, our range coordinator will ask the range for their final status.
Rock, report range status.
Range green.
That was confirmation. The range is green for launch.
Propellant closing out.
Flight computer configured for launch.
Under 1 minute.
LD, are you go for launch? LD, go for launch.
There's that final go for launch. We are just over 30 seconds away until the maiden launch of this vehicle. Good luck, Terran 1, and have fun. Here we go.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 1. Lift off.
Terran 1 has cleared the tower.
Switchover maneuver starting. Launch pad facing.
Look at that blue fire! If you can hear me over the cheering, the vehicle is now headed downrange in an easterly direction over the Atlantic Ocean. Our next ascent milestone is max Q, around 80 seconds.
Terran 1 is supersonic. Get telemetry switch over at the ground station. Max Q.
We are on our way to making a new history. Terran came ready to play today. You just heard that call out indicating Terran 1 just made it through. Max Q. We just completed a major step in proving to the world that 3D printed rockets are structurally viable. Up next, we'll be looking for a call out that stage 1 performance is nominal.
And if you're just joining us, you are watching History in the Making. Terran 1 on its first flight, the next major event, MECO and stage separation. We'll keep listening in, but checking milestones off. Cleared the pad and max Q. The next big test just seconds away.
MECO and upper stage ignition. This means that we had a main engine cutoff for stage 1, and directly following that we had second stage ignition, which you can see the Aeon vacuum engine in that beautiful view in the night sky. Reminder, there is no fairing for this maiden launch as we don't have a customer payload, but we do instead have a memento of the first ever circular test print.
You're looking at a live view of the second stage.
We are standing by for an update on what's happening with the stage 2 engine.
And if you're looking there at that live view, that looks like a second stage that has not ignited. We had successful MECO, we had stage separation, and you can see velocity is falling. The second stage has had an anomaly. We have not had ignition. 4 minutes into flight. Unfortunately, this would mean a loss of vehicle. We're waiting for an update from Mission Control to confirm this, but that engine has not ignited, but still very much history in the making here tonight. Incredible job to Relativity, the world's first 85% 3D printed rocket, an entirely new engine. Survived Max Q, survived MECO, survived stage separation. Those are 3 incredibly difficult milestones to achieve, and they've proven it is possible, just not to orbit. But that is a first flight, well for the record books. We're waiting for an update from Mission Control on what is...
This is the LD. There has been a T-plus anomaly with stage 2. LC, please begin anomaly procedure section 25. Copy.
And there's confirmation, an anomaly with the second stage. Second stage has not ignited from what we saw on those cameras. They've cut the feed. They are beginning anomaly procedures. But still an extremely historic flight for this technology. An incredible first flight for a brand new privately funded company. But ultimately, not what we were looking for. Stay with us. We're going to listen into updates here on the vehicle. If you haven't yet, though, subscribe so you never miss another launch live. Stay tuned to the Launchpad News website. That's where we're going to put out an article with more information as we learn it as well. So we'll be staying for an update there. The second stage will now fall back down to Earth. We have removed the clocks. Let's listen in.
From our launch director, we did have an anomaly with stage 2 during flight. But maiden launches are always exciting, and today's flight was no exception. Although we didn't reach orbit, we significantly exceeded our key objectives for this first launch, and that objective was to gather data at Max Q, one of the most demanding phases of flight, and achieve stage separation. Today's flight data will be invaluable to our team as we look to further improve our rockets, including Terran R.
Our team will now carefully analyze this data to determine what led to this outcome. So stay tuned to @RelativitySpace on Twitter and relativityspace.com for additional updates in the days and weeks ahead.
I want to thank the entire Relativity team for all of their hard work in getting us to this point. No one's ever attempted to launch a 3D printed rocket into orbit, and while we didn't make it all the way today, we gathered enough data to show that flying 3D printed rockets is possible.
As Arwo mentioned, we will apply the lessons learned today in our future vehicle, Terran R. What we are doing has never been done before, but it is undoubtedly a worthwhile endeavor that will transform the aerospace industry forever. And with that, we will conclude our coverage for tonight. I am Rachelle Aniceto. It has been an honor.
And I'm Arwa Tizani Kelly. Thank you, and see you next time.
And as we put there on screen, congratulations to Relativity. Good luck, have fun. The mission is in the books. Not a perfect flight, but you know what? It was still major milestones, and as one of our teams said, Relativity has proven themselves tonight. They are a contender in the commercial launch market, and that is absolutely true. 3 major milestones checked off: Max Q, MECO, and stage separation. They separated a rocket in flight. They survived maximum aerodynamic pressure of an 85% 3D printed rocket. This is entirely new technology. And to be honest, I think a lot of us would have been surprised if it made it to orbit on a first flight. That doesn't normally happen, but congratulations to Tim Ellis and that entire team with today's flight. We can't wait to see you back on the pad with the learns. Obviously, there's been an anomaly. There'll be an investigation. They'll have to learn from it, so it might be a while till we see another Relativity space rocket out on the pad, but we know we will see them back out there again. As I said, stay tuned to the Launchpad News. We'll put out an article recapping today's flight. That's also where you can stay up to date on other space news. For those that were joining us late, though, we want to point out one last time for you tonight. Make sure you head on over to the website, click on Lunex. We announced our first mission to the moon, and we want you to join us on board. You can send your name, family name, pet name, favorite teacher for free. Just click on that Get Your Ticket Today button and send your name to the moon on our payload. And if you'd like to send a photo or video, you can do so as well by upgrading your payload. All explanatory on the website. Again, thanks to Astrobotic for partnering with us on that mission. But that's going to do it for us here today, here at TLP Network. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And this was our third launch coverage of Terran 1, Relativity Space's maiden flight of their Terran 1 rocket. And we were so honored to have you joining us here. We bring you full live coverage of all the rockets, both the big and the little guys from around the world, engine testing, and more. We have so many big launches coming up, and you can follow along all of those over on Launch Control on our website. Just click on Launches. That's where you'll see all upcoming flights. We've got a couple more this month. We got OneWeb launching out of India on the GSLV, a couple more Starlinks, and an Electron. And then when April kicks off, we've got a lot coming. We've got Ariane 5's second last flight. We've got Transporter 7 with SpaceX. We've got a Falcon Heavy, the second last Delta IV Heavy. We probably have Starship and tons more happening in April, and you can catch that all live right here on TLP. The only reason we're able to do this is thanks to your guys' generous support. We'll have team on site for many of these launches, so we continue to strive to bring you the best possible coverage of everything space. Make sure you follow us over on Twitter. That's where we tweet space news as it happens. Consider joining us over on our Discord as well. We've got a bunch of people hanging out in live comm. Shout out to Joe, Kevin, Marianne, Mike, Park, The Forg, Stealth, Eulor, and Wyatts. Shout out to our team that was on today, and welcome to our new TLP crew. We're glad to have you with us. The last thing to do, it's the YouTube thing. It is launch day, which means you can get 10% off of everything over on the shop. Use promo code launch day, and you can get our prints, shirts, stickers, tons of stuff there. As always, my favorite, the lunar sample return bag. It's just awesome, and it makes people turn and look when you're walking around with it. But we're glad to have had you with us here tonight, and that's going to do it. But from TLP HQ, my name's Zach. This was our launch coverage of Terran 1's maiden flight, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.